Hi everyone, it's Jenny from Mount Pisgah Arboretum. Today we are going to go check out some lichen. So lichen is this green fuzzy stuff hanging out on the branches of this oak tree here. Here's some close up. It looks like this. We have tons of different kinds of lichens here at the Arboretum. So we're going to go look and see which ones we can find out and about this morning. What is this lichen stuff anyway? It's all over on the branches behind me. Lichen is its own organism. It's not a plant, it's not an animal. It's actually two organisms growing together and helping each other. Here is one of my favorite lichens. This is old man's beard, Usnea. And there are a few different kinds. The kind that we have most in the Arboretum is this kind of little short, stubby stuff. Lichen is made up of algae and fungus. So the algae is the part that makes the lichen the green. That's the part that does photosynthesis. It collects sunlight and turns it into sugars for the lichen to use to be able to grow. The fungal part kind of makes the structure and the form for the lichen. Old man's beard is fun because you can find the fungal strand inside the lichen. Oh yeah, here it is. So see that really clear, whitish looking stuff inside? That's the fungal part. You can't do that with most lichens, pick them apart like that. Most of them it's all connected. But you can do that with the old man's beard, which makes it kind of fun. And it's a little bit stretchy and sort of like elastic almost. It's fun to play with. Right here you can see some fishnet lichen hanging down from this oak tree. Fishnet lichen here at the Arboretum gets really long. So usually if you're seeing a really long lichen hanging down out of trees that's this light green color, it's usually the fishnet lichen here. Here's a big bunch of it that fell down out of a tree. So it often comes down in these big clumps like this. And it's called fishnet lichen because it kind of looks like netting. And in this clump, you can find individual bits that are the younger bits that actually look like tiny little nets. See if we can see that a little closer. There we go. See, it looks like a little net. And as it grows, all these little nets, the holes in them get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they kind of hang down and droop more until you get this like huge mess of fishnet lichen. Oregon white oak trees have that name because they're known for having kind of a whitish colored bark. They have a white bark because of a lichen that grows and covers the bark of this tree. Some lichen hangs down low off of branches, kind of like this one here. But there are a lot of lichens that are crustose forms, and those ones are just smacked onto a rock or tree bark, and they're flat. And if you took them off, like you can't get the lichen off of this bark. You would have to just take a whole chunk of the bark to get to the lichen. Here's a really cool lichen on the bark of this tree. So it has kind of the whitish color, and then there's all these little black squiggly lines. This one is called Graphis Lichen because it sort of looks like writing on the bark of the tree. This tree here has a couple of cool things on it. It has this darker green stuff on it. This is what lichen gets mistaken for all the time. This is moss. So moss and lichen are two different things, but a lot of people think that lichen is the same thing as moss. It does also have some lichen here on the tree, Can you find the lichen? Right here, one of those white crusty lichens that's up against the bark of the tree. And then right here is another kind of lichen that's hanging down. So around here, generally, it's not always true, but usually if you look from a distance at a tree, the darker green stuff is often moss, and kind of the lighter green stuff is usually lichen. Moss is a little tiny plant. If you look, you can see little leaves for the moss. Lichen will not have little leaves. Lichen is not a plant. It is in its own group. This is Staghorn Lichen because it kind of looks like the antlers of a deer. And this one is really fun because you how old this one is. You can count the branching on it and figure out its age. So you start at the bottom. I'm going to pull this one off, which I wouldn't do if it was still on the plant because lichen is a living organism and I try to take care of it. But once it falls to the ground, it's going to start to decompose. So that's stuff you can mess with and tear up if you want. So here's the start of it. And what you do to age it is count the branches. There's 1 branch, 2 branch, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 branches. So that means that this is about, this little lichen here, about 9 years old. So lichens grow very, very slowly. Another reason why I don't ever tear it down off of trees because it takes it a long time to get big. The lichen behind me here is lung lichen. So this lichen can get pretty big. This is actually kind of medium-sized for it. And it's called lung lichen because it kind of, this one especially, kind of looks like the shape of a lung inside the body. So that's where it got its name. I know a lot of kids that call this like dinosaur pelt because it kind of looks like you think dinosaur skin should look. Here's one that already fell down out of a tree, and you can see that the top part of it is a dark green. So that's the part with the algae on the top. And then the bottom part is white. So that's the part with the fungal part because fungus doesn't really like too much sunlight. So it's always growing this way on the tree so that the algae part is showing out so that the lichen can make food for itself. And then the fungal part that needs to be protected from the light is always growing down so it's covered and protected. Lichens are at their most vibrant in the winter when the leaves have fallen off of the trees. The lichens up in the tops of the trees are able to get more sunlight. They're able to get more water from the rain. They actually do most of their growing during the winter. And that's when they're really bright colored and you really notice them on the hillsides as you're driving through the Willamette Valley. I remember the algae and fungus for lichens with a little story. Algae and Franny fungus took a lichen to each other. Algae was a great cook, so they decided to make a restaurant. So Franny fungus built the restaurant, and algae did all the cooking in the restaurant. So that's how I remember the algae and the fungus inside of lichen. Lichens are such fascinating, interesting organisms, but they're often overlooked because they're pretty tiny and they grow really slow. So the next time you go out for a walk, give lichens a little love and actually pay attention to them. See all the different ones you can find and enjoy checking them out because they're really cool.